This is a website, a real production website. Let's go take a look at it. And I generated the test for breakoutgames.com the other day. So this is in a previous video. You can see all of that. I just used Shift to generate a bunch of tests, and it gives me a pretty good starting point, but obviously doesn't fill in like the specific business logic. So there's all sorts of things inside of here. All the different, I guess, game, locations, city locations where you can do it, all the different kind of themes and so forth um, that you can actually, the different, I guess, games that you can play. So um, there's a lot to look at here. Now, they don't do any kind of like booking or anything directly on the site, so there won't be really big, I guess, big, heavy components to test. But we can still test a lot of these different things. Just that like the proper data is being passed to the views. It's saving information wherever. I know they're doing some kind of like session state management where they, keep track of what location you're on. So like if you are in Atlanta or whatever, you can see um, that they actually track this. Like, so for example, I'm in Louisville. Yay. So they have a location in Louisville. And if I navigate the site from here, it's going to kind of remember that. So we can start kind of writing tests for those kinds of things. Maybe this little banner at the top. So I'm just kind of getting an idea of like things that can be tested. So maybe this banner gets placed in a certain way. I also know that they're running everything on AMP, which is really cool. It's a way for Google to kind of cache your site, makes it super, super responsive, especially on mobile. So maybe there's some elements of that we can make sure are set up correctly, and you can kind of see that here in the URL. So we'll keep this site up in the background, just the live site. That way it's easier to kind of see where we're going with things. So, all right, so let's get started. Let's jump in the code. So again, everything was generated here already. So if we go down and look at tests, we can see that different things are in here. So I'm going to kind of poke around and just maybe try to fill out one of these controllers completely during this video kind of live stream, and then I may do some future live streams based on some feedback of like what other areas we want to see tested. So I think today we'll keep it pretty simple and just kind of go from there. So I'll check the comments every now and then, so just feel free to throw some stuff in there. But what I'm going to do is kind of just scroll through here and kind of see what might be able to be tested here. And then I'm not going to worry too much about like refactoring or anything of that nature, just because I just want to kind of, I'm tasked really with backfilling the tests here. So I'm going to backfill the test first, and then if I see some things, I'll make recommendations. And again, we can do that kind of in a future video. So right away, I'm kind of curious, what does this navigate do? Okay, this is a private method inside here. Okay, so there's a lot of logic that happens in this private method for navigate that actually a couple of these, this index and this checkout, are using. So that's kind of interesting. This create hold. What's also interesting is PHP Storm is graying these out, which normally means they're not used anywhere. So that's kind of interesting as well. So let's see if there's something else that looks a little more used. Cool. We have this gifts controller, which is an invocable controller, but it also has two other public methods on it, which normally mean that it's a regular controller. So it's kind of weird. There's an invocable controller here. Let's start with this gifts controller. There's not too much logic in here, but just enough to, I think, get our feet wet today. We could start with some of these more simple views, and this would really just be a copy-paste. Honestly, it's just a different view that it kicks out, but it really has the same logic here of what gets sent back. So let's start here. I'm going to bring this off to the the right. I like to have my implementation on the right and my test on the left. So let's go bring up the test on the left, and let's kill this sidebar so we get a little more room. Okay, so yeah, let's start with the gifts controller. And again, we see that it basically, like the way the shift works is it basically just pulls this name out and kind of creates a happy path test, if you will. So of course, this invoke, definitely I see a lot of if statements here, so there's going to be a lot more paths. sad paths that we're going to test, but these are pretty straightforward happy paths. So again, we'll start with some of these smaller ones like purchase and confirm. But before I start writing this code, again, just because this is an invocable controller, it begs the question, how is that actually being used? So let's go look at the web routes real fast, just to make sure. I don't want to write tests for things that aren't even being used necessarily, so let's kind of take a look at that first, make sure we're on the right track here. So GIFs controller. So this GIFs controller does use purchase and confirmation, and it does use that invocable bit directly. So that's kind of interesting. So again, might be something to refactor. I'm not going to worry about it right now, though. Again, I don't want to go changing their code. My task is to backfill tests here, so I want to stay focused. So all these are indeed being used. So let's start writing some tests for them. And let me just check, make sure we're all good on the feed. Whoops. Cool. And cool. All right, here we go. Let's work on purchase. Just because I'm going to choose this just because it's pretty straightforward, nice and simple. There's no logic in here, so I think we can start tackling this. So another thing we'll do is let's go ahead and hone this down to HTTP features, HTTP controllers, and what is that, the GIFs controller test? All right, cool. So we have 3 incomplete tests. So let's start focusing on this one. Okay, so we are going to get the market GIFs confirmation. That seems strange. Let's bring up this web controller again. Oh, all of these are grouped underneath a market prefix. Okay. And then there's some logic here that happens. That if location is passed in, then use it. Otherwise, pull the first one out of the database. Or pull the first one for that market out of the database. So I can already see we're going to need a couple different things here. So the test generator gave us the market. That's going to get passed in. Okay. And then location, we can start by not passing in a location. And it should pull the first one off that market. So I'm going to consider that an additional path, though. So let's do this. Let's say, oh, this is actually purchase. They're out of order. Whoops. Okay, we'll start down here. Let's pull this off and go back in time here. Let's put that incomplete back up there just so we're focusing on purchase here. Okay, so we have market and location. These are built for us. They're not route injected yet, so let's see if we can fix that. There is no route name for this, so we'll just have to build these up ourselves. And I think these have slugs. Let's check this out. Market. I think there's a yeah, get route key name. It's based off the slug. Okay, cool. So let's set that up. I think what I'd like to do, I know I said I wasn't going to change these, but I'm already flip-flopping here. I think what I'd really like to do is give this a name of like GIFs purchase or something, just so it's a little easier to mess with these routes. Or sorry, name, and let's make this GIFs dot purchase. All right, let's see how that goes. That way we can use a route over here, and we're going to get immediate testing from this, so it's not, I don't think it's the end of the world to make that quick refactor. So let's call this GIFs. And we did say that location is, or in this case, GIFs purchase, there is no location. That's kind of interesting. And then this one has a potential. So that's actually a different even route. Okay, that's going to get really fun. All right, so let's do this. GIFs purchase, and this is only going to take the market. So we can pass in the market here. And we're not going to use location, so I'm going to get rid of this for now, or just comment it out, because we'll probably want it in the other test. And let's just see if this actually blows up. Okay, good. We got an exception. No encryption key was specified. Okay, that's fine. I don't have all this set up locally. So let's copy the .env example to .env, and let's make sure with artisan we generate a key. All right, cool. And let's try to run that again. Okay, now we get a failure. 500 does not match 200. Let's turn off exception handling so we can just kind of hack our way through this. All right, what's the dealio here? Whoops. Redis connection session not configured. Interesting. Are they using Redis directly in the application? We'll probably have to configure that. Let's find out. Redis? No direct Redis stuff in app. Let's see if we get any audience feedback here. Where can I see my comments? There we go. All right, I brought up the comments, so if we want a mob program, let me know if anyone has a quick idea on what Redis connection session is meaning. It doesn't seem like they're using Redis directly in the app. PHP unit. And I definitely have session drivers array, cache drivers array. Let's see if they hard code anything in the .env example. Maybe that was part of the problem. Okay, there are some things hard coded here. The cache driver is, but I should override those, so that shouldn't be a problem. Breakout games test stack. Problem number 1. I don't see anything in here specific to Redis. Redis connection not configured. Okay, let's, when in doubt, Google it out. Redis default has not been configured. Horizon. Are they using Horizon? Redis, Predis. All right, well, let's see if they're using Horizon. Horizon, nope. So it's not Horizon. Let's find, whoops. Let's find if they're using session anywhere. They're not even using like the specific session bit. Let's check the database PHP. So connections, MySQLite, nothing fancy there. Cache is here. This is very strange to me. I'm sure it's something super simple. Redis connection session, not configured. Why would you even try to be running session? Stumped on this one. Probably should have checked it before I went live. Let's see here. Let's go back and start looking at the code. So there's nothing top level here. Where are they using session stuff? What else does Google have to say other than that top result? Redis and Laravel. Yeah, it's like not even using. Let's do this. Let's go to Laravel 6. And I'm going to steal the default env here just to back off any oddities that might be in. Nothing wrong. Troubleshooting live. Yeah, well, it's a little annoying. Redis connection session not configured. So somewhere in the code, they have to be calling session. They have to be asking for sessions to be tracked using the cache. Maybe it's hard-coded in sessions? Ah, driver's hard-coded to Redis. It's not using. Oh man, I gotta be honest. I hate when people do this. I never understand why people overwrite their local configurations. Bit of a tangent, but I mean, there's so many hooks already to use these env. I mean, look at that. I just burned, what, 5 minutes? I know that seems like nothing, but it was definitely frustrating, and it's just kind of like, there's no reason to hardcore override that. Like, you have no environmental configuration. Obviously made it very difficult to test, even though everything looked right everywhere else in the env and the PHP unit. It wasn't honoring that because someone had come in, overwritten, this core configuration to be, Redis. So, I mean, honestly, like I don't even understand doing that here. Like just use the session driver, right? It's an env variable. That's what it's for. Just I try not to touch these. To be totally fair, I'm a bit biased because of Shift, but you know they're just a nightmare to upgrade because they change every version. They change in patch versions even. So let's see if that gets us a little farther. I'll get off my horse there. Okay, let's see what we run into next. Trying to get property of non-object. And where is that? Gives purchase blade. Okay, cool. So that's actually good. It actually got a little lower to the actual blade file, and we're just missing some stuff here, right? It doesn't know what location is, probably because markets locations first, just kind of quietly returned null. So let's finish setting that up. So now that we've got that all squared away and we're getting a little deeper in the code, we do seem to be hitting the right thing. We are getting a 200. That's fine. Let's start beefing out these additional assertions. So let's say response assert view is, and that's going to be this locations view. And we're going to want to make sure that, that it is first of all quoted. And then let's also do something like response assert view has, and we'll say market, and that should be equal to the market that we passed in, right? And I'm pretty sure underneath the covers, Laravel's smart enough to do the model is comparison on these two. So it really ends up comparing them by ID. But if not, we could use a little closure here. So let's test this out and see if we get a little farther. So trying to get property of non-object. Where is this happening? It's happening earlier in the view. So it's difficult to know if the error is happening first or if the assertions are passing and then the error. So I'm going to assume that these are passing. So let's get this market bit happy because we're going to need to do that anyways. So let's check out the factory for market. Whoops, that's not going to do it. So let's go to market factory. And again, these were generated by Shift, but it's not necessarily going to get sub-relationships. So let's close this web. It's not going to get market locations per se. Like it's not going to build up a many-to-many relationship. It'll do belongs to relationships, as we can see here, but it won't necessarily go super deep. So we can do a couple things here. I think the easiest thing to do is probably just to bring this location back to life and set its market ID, assuming that's the way it's labeled, is to market ID to the one we made. And let's just double check that before we, so let's go to location factory, and it does have a market ID. So locations belong to market, and then market have many locations, it seems like. So let's run this. And are we still getting the non-object? So we are. So let's take a look at head blade. Looks like 125 maybe, or even 4. It's a little hard because it's using view cache. That's another question I always have. Is there a way to disable view cache for testing? I'll check the comments in a second, but let's see what's going on with head blade. Title. Well, title's not line 4. But that could be a problem. Description. So it's definitely pulling this stuff from somewhere. There's another thing that makes testing a little bit hard is sometimes if there's view composers. Let's see if there are. Yes, there's a view service provider. Here we go. There is a view composer. So we have nav markets pulls in information from the cache potentially. So yeah, this is probably what the issue is that there's going to need to be some things that get built up for these navigational components to work. So it looks like there's a view component for active states as well. So I'm just kind of getting an idea of like how these get pulled out. So these are all the states. And then the other one pulls out the nav markets. Okay. So not super easy here, but again, that first test on backfilling test is always going to be the most painful point once we have this set up, it should be a situation where, you know, it'll get a little easier. So let's finish hacking through these real quick. Let's get a little coffee. It's starting to get cold anyway. Okay, so let's take a look. Let's just kind of stroll through the structure here of these templates. So let me start at locations. Or well, first of all, let's go really deep to GIFs, what was that? GIFs purchase? I already forgot. GIFs controller goes to locations, GIFs dash purchase. Okay, so locations, GIFs dash purchase. Okay, this goes to Amplus layout. And let's just kind of get an idea. Let me close this other one. Let's get an idea of location. All right, location, market. So this page seems pretty good about finding, this could pose a problem. Seems pretty good about just using the data that it's getting passed in. So what's this dispatch GIFs? I'm just curious. Okay, that's easy. It's just a little helper method or function. Okay, so I think this is fine. I think probably what's happening is higher up here, this is leveraging some of that view composer. But I just want to make sure if we're going to go through the trouble of setting all this up, I want to make sure we kind of get the proper setup. So in the setup, I saw some stuff in the view composers. So we'll check those out. But what else is there, right? So let's kind of just get a plan here. So market is definitely set. And that seems to be all here. All right, cool. Okay, well, let's go back to those view composers. Hopefully those are all we need. So what was that? View service provider. So partials header location, partials market closed, and partial 404 error. I'm going to assume that those aren't going to be something that gets used where we are. Let's look at the rest of these. Markets index. It seems like markets location map isn't being used either. Maybe this one is used. Partials, headers, location selector. Whoops, I bet you this one is the one. Yeah, base blade. There we go. Yeah, I think Amplus hit that. Let's go back to Amplus. Yeah, here we go, base. And then base goes to blade. Okay, so here's our issue. Everything market fine is here, but this uses, I believe, those states, it looks like. So where was that? Yeah, here's header location selector, which this is a little amp bit, and here's those nav markets, right? So we need these nav markets to be functional, it seems like. Well, no, that should loop over and just do nothing. Let's take a closer look at this error and see exactly what it's complaining about. So head.blade, and which line? We don't know. So head.blade goes after title. URL, description. See, even if these weren't set up, there's no property access, so that, oh, here we go, market locations, maybe? Let's bring up this actual file. All right, and then what line? Line 125. 125. Location, state, abbreviation. Wow, okay. Location, factory. There's no state. There's no state for location factory. So let's go look at the schema for location, create location table. It might not all be in here, but at least we'll get an idea of some of the other stuff. Yeah, it looks like state just needs to create a state, basically. Let's just do that. What is it called? State ID, maybe? State ID? Yeah, there we go. So let's build one up. Random or create, what's that? That's interesting. Little helper method. Huh. Well, let's build up a state ID. It's going to be that function callback. And I don't know if that gets an instance of anything or not, but we'll just say return factory state class create, and dereference its ID kind of directly. And let's see if that gets us a little farther down the rabbit hole. Class state not found. Well, I didn't import it. My bad. All right. Table states has no column named updated. Updated at. Interesting. Why is it trying to make that? Let's look at state. What is it? You can do something like timestamps as false, maybe? Division by 0. Location 65. Okay, well, deeper down the rabbit hole. Keep getting things set up here. All right, 65. Division by 0. This aggregate reviews. Rounded. Wow. Get all the aggregate of all ratings. Interesting. Aggregate reviews. Wow. Location. Well, we don't have any reviews. This method should probably be a little nicer in the fact that it should return some kind of default thing if there are no reviews, right? Like there should be some kind of guard clause here that says if this is basically 0, or if not, we can just do if not for now. We could return. But again, I'm not going to commit this because I don't want this to affect the real site, but just to play on for a second, let's just see if we can hack a little farther down the road. Okay, now trying to get property of non-object. Keep playing the game here. Market 183. Okay, state abbreviation, selector title. This arrow title. So state abbreviation. Okay, so this doesn't know what a state is either. Okay, fine. So let's go to the market. Whoops, market. Factory. There it is. And this is going to need a state. That's kind of part of the problem with building all this up is, you know, it really depends very heavily. You know, it's kind of all about the model factories, I guess is the point. So these were already generated. These weren't things that Shift made. So I'm going to fill in a few more of these blanks, but then I think if I keep running into this problem, I might let Shift generate the factories and then merge the two together because we're kind of missing a lot of relationships here. And I also want to better understand when and why they're using this random or create. It's pretty handy. It's basically just seeing, hey, if there is already one that exists, then kind of get a random one from the database, otherwise create one. So it's pretty cool, a little helper method. So I do like that, but I just kind of want to understand, you know, maybe why they chose to do that. Is there any logic that's happening there, or is it just, you know, a shorthand for this, or to not build up the database? So anyways, let's keep hacking and see if we get a little farther. Oh, good. Okay, so we passed now. All right, so a couple different hacks to make all that work. Let's turn off notifications there. And let's see back in our test where we landed. Okay, cool. So let's do a few more things in our test. And again, I'm not going to commit those changes, those low-level changes I made to the models for now, at least not without test driving those out a bit more, or backfilling the test. Okay, the next thing I want to do is make sure that that market or location is the same as the location that I sent in. This should just auto pass, which is good. And then let's get a little more strict here. I think this is fine. There's no logic here. But technically speaking, this is a bit of logic. So I want to copy this, and I want to say purchase. And first of all, let's say purchase returns view without location. Let's just say that, just to differentiate between the two. So, or let's say maybe more specifically with or using or with market. I think with makes more sense because, you know, you say a views with certain data. So with market location. Okay, so one path here is that it's going to use the market location. And then we could even go so far as to say something like when location is null. So that's pretty hardcore. Let's just cut that out. You can infer that from the test. And then let's say view with, let's see, route location maybe, or past location. How about that? That sounds good. Okay, and now what we're going to do is we're not going to link these two up, and we're going to pass this in as an additional parameter, and we're going to need a route here. So gifts purchase, what do we want to call this? Is there a way to build a URL in Laravel to see, like, can you build a Laravel or a URL in Laravel? Let's see, URL helper Laravel. Like, I want to see if I can pass the parameters in. I think you can. Like, would it fill them in if I left them as placeholders? Like, I'm wondering if it does that. Is it smart enough to do that? That would be kind of cool, but also, maybe a bit over the top. I could understand if it doesn't, I guess is what I'm saying. You can definitely pass data here, but where does it know to put it? Is that just like query string? All right, well, it's not explicit, so let's just try it ourselves. So let's just do this. Let's do a DD on URL, and let me bring up the web URL. And so now this is going to be gifts location purchase. So what we're going to call this is name gifts.location.purchase. Let's try that. And what I'm going to do, yeah, see, that doesn't make any sense if I already named it. I guess what I was trying to see is if I could do something like this. Can I take this and put markets in front of it? And like, what is this output, right? I'm just kind of curious. Output's nothing because I forgot to make this a test. Let's give it that test annotation. Yeah, see, it doesn't inject. It just throws it on the end. So there's nothing there. Now, well, wait a second. Let's give it a fair shot. Let's say markets, arrow, market. Yeah, it just puts it on the end. It's actually smart. It was actually smart enough to pull the slug out, though. That's kind of neat. Maybe they need to like perfectly match. I don't know. No, that doesn't seem to work. Maybe it does in some form, but whatever. Okay, so anyways, let's just use the route we have. I was just kind of curious there as a tangent. So gifts location purchase, we pass in all the market information. Let's run this, and of course it's just passing. So nothing exciting there. It basically does all the same logic. It's just the fact that we want to make sure that this, kind of works that way. So just real quick, as a tiny refactor, and we know that we're running PHP 7.2 at least because this is a Laravel 6.0 application, I'm just going to change this to the no coalesce operator. So now that we're armed with test, tiny little refactor, everything's still passing. Yay! Okay, let's do this for this confirmation as well. And just to speed things along a bit, I am going to copy pasta this confirmation bit here, and then I'm going to replace purchase with just some magic text editing. I think those are all of them, so let's just say confirmation, and that's all the same. So the only thing we should be missing now are the web routes for that. So let's just go back and make sure these are the same. So we'll say, name this the route gifts. This is location confirmation. Whoops, not configuration. Confirmation. Cool. And then the other one will just be gifts confirmation. So where's that? Here it is, gifts confirmation. Let's drop that. So again, we should just get some auto passing behavior. Nope, no copy pasta. This is groups. Where's that? So it is called gifts. Did I call it groups? Am I goofy? Oh, I put them on the wrong thing. Let's take that back. Where is our gifts confirmation? There it is. I put it in the wrong spot, my mistake. And now I have like triple semicolons. Let's take that off, and this is GIFs location confirmation, right? Okay, good. Let's try that again. Yay, auto passing. Okay, cool. So almost done here. Let's go back, and now kind of for, I guess, the beef, right, is this guy's going to be a little bit more difficult to mess with. So I'm going to leave this called invoke just for now. Let's take off that incomplete test, and let's kind of start working our way down. Now, when I definitely come across some more interesting logic like this, I really just like to work top down. So let's kind of focus on this section here. So this is send to correct market if somehow they got to a URL with a different market than where the location belongs. Okay, so let's say invoke redirects to, just kind of synthesizing that, correct market with a different market than the location exists. So redirects to locations market. How about that? Whoops, redirects. I am not spelling this morning. Redirects. There we go. Okay, so let's focus on that. I think this is a good name for the test. So basically, it's going to redirect to the locations market if they differ. So I could throw that on, when they differ, but we have this little code comment here. So location needs to be set, and basically the market IDs need to mismatch. So I can go down here and take this code, this setup code for that. And we do have a route already for GIFs. That's awesome. And we should be able to pass in location. So I'm assuming, let's just see that in action. I'm assuming if I go back to GIFs, somewhere in here, there's like a location question mark, and there it is. So location's optional. Notice it goes to that invoke, and we'll probably refactor that here in just a second, but let's kind of leave this alone for now. So basically when they don't match, then it in turn is going to go to it's going to redirect to GIFs with the right location for that other market. Okay, great. So instead of assert OK, we can say assert redirect, and that should end up going to the same route, but with different parameters. So the locations market, and the location itself. No additional assertions necessary. So we're just going to need to make a market for this particular location. So I think what I can do is either just set that up in the factory. Well, that actually might already be set up in the factory. Let's go take a look. Probably ought to leave this up. Yeah, random or create. Good. See, here's the issue with this random create function now that I'm thinking about it. The problem is randomly, I could get a market that exists. Well, for the purposes of this test, that would not be cool, and in fact, occasionally cause what's one of my pair buddies called one time a spurious failure. So that spurious failure would be very, very annoying because just every now and then, based on the random pulling from the database, this location could end up with the same market as the one that we're trying not to compare against, right? So like that could just happen, and therefore this test would fail. Not because of any of your setup was really wrong per se, but because of this kind of, helper method. Well, it kind of shot you in the foot there. So we have two options. We can explicitly make this another market, or we can kind of stop using this random or create. Now, considering they don't really have any other tests, I think the straightforward thing would just be to not use that method anymore. So I'm going to get rid of it, and obviously copied too much there, and this should be called market, and I'm going to reformat that. Cool. And now this should all just work. We got an error. What do we get? Unique constraint failed. Time zones PHP. Time zones PHP. Unique constraint failed. Time zones PHP. It's kind of a funny constraint name. Did I copy paste something wrong? Let's see if that's anywhere in the code. PHP. time zones. What uses a time zone? So maybe that random or unique was doing something. Did it put the market in a time zone? Supported PHP time zones. Let's go see. So market class. I see what's going on. Okay, so someone used that random or create. Does this have a time zone? Yeah, here we go. Someone used that probably because deeper down, this was causing integrity constraints, that unique constraint to crap out. So how about this? Let's swap this out. This is a juggling act here, and I'm going to clean all this up over time, but let's call this time zone unique or create. What is that? Time zone class? Yeah. I think that's how they were writing that. And I don't need a semicolon. Let's see what happens now. There we go. Let's just run this a couple times. There we go. There's our spurious failure state's title. Okay, so here's what needs to happen. What really needs to happen is some of these things need to have seeders. So like states, time zones, they need to have test seeders that end up getting injected into the database instead of like always being, kind of randomly created. And then what can happen is instead of using this random or create, we could pull, kind of a random ID from there, or just not even like random or create. Just make a function like, random record or something, So something like that. So I think that's what I'm going to do kind of on the side, but it's good to run that multiple times because we can see that's that spurious failure that I was talking about. It's just like every now and then on someone's machine, it's not even the third time. It's just, maybe it's, again, it's random. Look, there's 5 in a row that runs now, 6, 7, 8. I mean, this could run for a week straight and then on the build box someday just breaking. So you really got to watch out for these. That random, like I said, I kind of didn't like that right away. So it'll fail eventually, but it's random. So, could be 20 times, could be 3 weeks from now, could be 3 months from now when everyone forgets. So there we go, failed again. So I think we'll stop there for today, just because we ran into a couple of those headaches. I may do another live stream even this afternoon or tomorrow or something. I'll get this whipped out a little bit better, get this set up more, and then recap some of that setup. But I think this was fun to kind of see getting started and see, honestly, kind of the true struggle sometimes, especially when you don't know the project. I kind of have some things against me here. I'm not super familiar with every detail of the project because I didn't write it all. So it doesn't really matter who you are, though. Even if you wrote it yourself, you can still run into these types of issues. So I'm going to clean up some of the things we did, probably backfill a test for that one review method, and then I'm going to get under wraps these seeders and so forth, all these factories, so it's a little smoother next time, and we can focus a bit more on testing some more code paths instead of kind of having to hack around. So appreciate everyone's patience. Hopefully you found this helpful, and follow that thread on Twitter to see more live streams next time.